Namaskar. Welcome to the last series of CBSE NEP webinar series. We have been organizing quite a few webinar series since last 15 days, and today is the last series in that context. I am happy to inform everybody that so far we have 236,000 views for all the sessions, and today's session is on innovative pedagogy. I request Director Academics, Dr. Joseph Emmanuel, to give the opening remarks for today's session, sir. Sir.
Good evening, everyone. Mrs. Sweetie Changson, Joint Secretary, School Education, Government of India. Dr. Andarish Johari, Director, CBSE. Sri K.K. Chowdhury, Director, CBSE. All the senior officers and eminent panelists, Dr. Anju Shahsod, Mrs. Gulshan Kaur, Mrs. Alka Avasti, Ms. Anchal Chomal, and Mrs. Sunita Rao, and all the senior officers, senior principals, educationists, and all those who are joining us on this platform on today's evening. CBSE has been organizing a series of webinars to familiarize its school leaders and teachers with the various initiatives recommended by the new National Education Policy. As Dr. Pragya has very rightly mentioned, today's webinar is the last webinar in the series of 8 webinars planned by CBSE on the occasion of the first year anniversary celebration of NEP's launch. So we have started this webinar series on 4th August, and today is the 8th day of the webinar series. And in between, we had webinars on various important themes like assessment, career counseling, then use of technology in education, skilling in education, foundation literacy and numeracy, and key stage assessment, SAFL, school quality assessment and assurance, all the important themes which the Ministry of Education has initiated as part of implementing the new national education. Today's webinar on innovative pedagogy is very important because pedagogy has a very important role in transacting the syllabus and curriculum in the classrooms where the learning is actually taking place. Art integrated learning, sports integrated learning, experiential learning, joyful learning, different forms of pedagogies are being used in the system. And the importance of this innovative pedagogy and how it is going to connect the learner with the real life and how it will give the learner a real feeling of learning. And it will also help the learner to continue the learning process throughout his lifetime. It's very important to connect the learner with the concept and the real life situation and make him enabled to use whatever is learned in the life throughout the life. So we have experts like Dr. Anju, Mrs. Sunita Rao, Mrs. Gulshan Kaur, Mrs. Alkavasti. All the experts are here. Their wisdom will be shared on this platform, and we are extremely fortunate to have Madam Sweetie Changson with us today. Mom is the Joint Secretary in charge of institutions in the ministry. She is the link between CBSE and other institutions and the Ministry of Education. So all the institutions are connected with the ministry through Mom's department. And she has been a great support to CBSE for all the initiatives taken by the board in implementing NEP. And whenever we are in need of any support, she's always there to support. She has very, very long experience in the field of education, elementary education, then school education. She has been a principal secretary in the government of Assam. She she has been commissioner and secretary to the various departments and a number of years experience in the field of education and general administration. On behalf of everyone present here and on behalf of Central Board of Secondary Education, we extend a warm welcome to Ma'am Sweetie Changson for today's webinar. Also, I extend a warm welcome and greetings to each one of the panelists present here for participating this program, and all the principals and teachers and all the officers of CBSE who are joining on us on this webinar. I extend greetings and warm welcome to everyone. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Pragya.
Pragya ma'am, please unmute.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. These are small hiccups for the online trainings. I'm sorry for that. We are honored to have Sweetie Changson ma'am amongst us. I request ma'am to deliver the keynote address for today's session. Ma'am.
Very good afternoon to all the panelists. This has been and to all the principals and teachers from CBSE from the family. Honored to join you all on this, especially with today's theme, innovative pedagogies. We have come a long way in the field of education, and we have seen each of us, all of you, especially the experts, the panelists, and all of you who are in the education sector, you have been involved in the evolution of education, particularly elementary education. And we have seen how things have come about right from the time of how the history of our elementary education in the pre-independence time, post-independence, and chiefly post Right to Education Act enactment. And of late, in this last 1 year, with the launch of the new national education policy, we have seen a sea change in the approach to the entire education sector. When we talk about innovative pedagogies, I think a lot of new elements come to mind. Education as such, especially now the new education policy is looking at a vast spectrum of the entire education approach. The structure itself, as you know, has changed. Now we are looking at foundational onwards, and the pre-primary education particularly also has been given a lot of importance. The new national education policy covers everything right from curriculum assessment to forms assessment to the new holistic progress path. Very aspect we are going to talk about today. They have new curriculums, have the best assessment forms, but until actual delivery in a proper manner, that is through the pedagogy. I think all of you would agree with me that everyone is working hard towards reducing dropouts, to increasing retention at the secondary level, and also to achieve better learning outcomes. We have been able to define learning outcomes in the past decade, and we have been able to map them to our lessons. But often is, what is the actual takeaway? Are the children really learning and what we understand with opened eyes from the perspective of the new education for global perspective? How are our children in life once they finish their school education? Is it that they are just coming to school, just is the to do? Every child is expected to on uniform, take their bags, take their books, go to school, attend classes, interact, meet with their friends, then get taught the lessons by the teacher, and then come back to schooling. How will we end with really how for the future, right? For becoming good citizens, not only in the national terms, but as a global citizen that they need. The changing world. Times are changing. I heard some of you just discuss before this meeting also that in the past 1 year itself, we have been uh, brought face to face with such circumstances that we have been compelled to take into our hands which we would not have imagined, using technology, using online forms. Uh, Again, the innovative ways of reaching out to children who don't have devices, worksheets, WhatsApp calls, or even talking on the phone to multiple groups. Good practices, innovative practices coming out in this past year. That propels us more to see what more can be done in the field of innovative pedagogy so that each child can be reached, each child to that particular novel, whatever what level that is expected of him through the schooling process can achieve. We have been practicing a traditional way, practice basis the beginning in most of the schooling system, most of the pedagogical system, beginning with 3 Rs and continuing with the further and finer explanation and understanding of the concepts as the children go on through the different grades as they go upwards. Along with this, now there's been a lot of, you would also have been associated with the talk of 21st century learners, way they approach the students, especially the teachers, out of education. So what happens in the classroom setting is the lesson that is being conveyed, is the syllabus that is being transacted, is it really coming across to them in a way that will help them in their future life? We are talking about things like critical thinking, problem solving skills, uh, leadership skills, peer interpersonal relationship, ability to handle these, and also soft skills like empathy, like collaboration, like being able to stand up for one's own values, to understand values, and to apply these into in their day-to-day lives. These are a different skill set, and and being able to impart these values so that children can imbibe these skills so that they can understand and put them to use. This is a big challenge which lies ahead, and this is where education we have seen how despite schools complete stop as far as education is concerned. Factories may have closed, and so industries may have closed down, but still our schools were functioning. Our learning was continuing in through a new medium, and it is really praiseworthy. Hats off to all the practitioners, all the teachers, principals, administrators who have been involved in this whole process, so, such that we are able to claim today that children have been learning losses, no doubt, but learning not to any stop. We have seen how technology can be beneficial. Thinking that only television or being those things to even discover for online education classes and how Zoom platforms, even offline examinations, but they're doing it and uploading this using technology, and they're being assessed and graded on it. That is something which we really would not have thought of or using. But now we are not only doing that, but going further to consider even online examinations at the broad level, for mass level. I'm very happy that the CBSE has been taking the lead in art integrated, and we the projects are also a compulsory part of the CBSE learning pattern. And I'm sure that the students are benefiting a lot from this. And not only just learning the subject itself, but different ways of appreciating and different ways of understanding the concepts which are involved in it. Last year, a lot of you must have been also involved with us, and especially Ms. Anju Chajo was a key part in that, in the toy pedagogy. That is a new area that we are considering in the ministry to come up with a developing pedagogy module. Use the hands-on form of learning. We practices where routine or which we express things which generate a capacity to think in the child, to think, to know, to apply. It's not just rote learning that they hear someone just reading out from a lesson or explaining it, and just an audio thing in the class, but something where they can also apply their minds, and that means they first understand the concept, and then they can make that, design that toy or puzzle, or they can use it to learn better. Similarly, science teacher to teaching science, or a music teacher just to teach music, or painting teacher to just stick to painting. But amongst in the teacher fraternity, also there's different subjects. also would have to start forming a very important area in our pedagogical I think there's these are just mentioning of you already practicing a lot of these innovative pedagogies, and you will be able to share your experiences. What we want is to, increase the involvement and ensure that more and more teachers and more practitioners adopt these innovative pedagogies while also keep I'm not saying we abandon that altogether or follow the traditional methods, but along with that, education system. We have a long way to go. I know it's our whole education spectrum. If you see it at different levels, we have very top of the category kind of schools, and we have schools to consider in the remote and rural areas. Designing these the ability to arouse interest in the students and to make studies fun, joyful, interesting. This would be our main aim. So with this, I thank you for inviting me to this webinar.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your encouraging words. And it has really motivated us to adopt innovative pedagogies as the way ahead. Now, taking the session further, I request Mrs. Alka Awasthi to proceed and take on the session for next proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pragya. I would like to firstly thank our chairman, sir, for having these series of webinars across all CBSE schools, along with Director Academics, Dr. Joseph Emmanuel, and Dr. Biswajit Saha, Director Skill Education and Training, for the wonderful way these webinars were conducted and the valuable insights that we educators got and are getting. Continuing with the learning graph, today we are going to understand the what, why, and how of the innovative pedagogies. Pedagogy is at the heart of teaching and learning. Innovation in teaching practices has become the need of the hour and is essential for engaging students to meet new challenges in a fast-changing world. Innovative pedagogies leads to excellence, and equity and excellence for all is what NEP 2020 pivots around. When we talk about innovative pedagogies, we refer to the explicit call to imagination in designing, facilitating, and debriefing learning processes. We are delighted to have a whole galaxy of eminent panelists today. In fact, they are the practitioners of innovative practices for the last many years, pioneers introducing many concepts which we would surely be benefiting from. So I'm looking forward to going home enriched and equipped. Let me introduce you all to Dr. Anju Kaur Shajong, educationist extraordinaire, a doctorate in education from King's College London, a celebrated author and columnist, founder patron of the Mahatma Gandhi International School under a trust of the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation, and recipient of the prestigious Civil Society Award by the Election Commission of India. Dr. Anju's invaluable contributions to the field of language, theatre, philosophy, and research thereof have brought a paradigm shift in innovative pedagogy. Dr. Anju has designed the experiential learning teacher training course for the CBSE on its Diksha platform. She has shared her insightful knowledge with various committees managing curriculum development, policy formulation, and teacher training with CBSE, NCRT, and GCERT to render strong leads for educators. She currently serves in the expert committee panel for toy-based pedagogy and also for the Holistic Progress Card constituted by the Ministry of Education, and has made presentations on the same for the NEP Conclave Shikshak Parv September 2020, inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister. A true reservoir of knowledge, Dr. Anju has founded the co-creative experiential learning movement for teachers in India and offers trainings to help implement the NEP 2020. Dr. Anju, we are truly delighted to have you with us on today's forum. I'm profoundly delighted to introduce the esteemed panelists for today's session, Dr. Sunita Rao, Principal DPS Nacharam Sikandrabad, is a successful school pioneer and a future thinker. Appointed as District Coordinator by COE in Chennai, content creator for modules on Diksha platform, review committee member for SQAA, Secretary of Hyderabad Sahodaya School Complex, and the British Council School Ambassador, plus a training consultant for British Council. She is an educationist who rose to prominence through significant contributions towards educational reforms and activity-based learning setting, new benchmarking scholastic principles against the best at international levels. The recipient of the prestigious CBSE Teachers Award 2018, Dr. Rao is blessed with farsightedness and passion to make a difference in the lives of children. It's a privilege to have you on today's forum. We have with us Principal of Bhavan Vidyalaya Panchkula, Ms. Gulshan Kaur, educationist par excellence, proud recipient of Global Principals Award 2020 and National Education Excellence Award 2017 by the Confederation of Indian Universities. Mrs. Kaur has also donned the role of key contributor for consultative meetings on policy making and manual development with CBSE. Mrs. Gulshan Kaur has efficiently carried out her duties as City Coordinator for Panchkula District for 3 consecutive years, She currently also serves as Regional Director for Student Quality Circle and is member of District Level Selection Committee for conferring the National Award to Teachers 2021. We are delighted to have you on today's forum. It's my privilege to welcome Ms. Achal Chomal, Associate Professor at Azim Premji University. She has done some path-breaking work in the field of education, making fundamental contributions coupled with enrichment and transformation of ideas in pedagogy and assessment reforms. Currently, Ms. Achal is closely associated with CBSE to add dimensions with her innovative and creative ideas, designing and delivering various specially designed courses to stimulate creative skills based on a thorough worldview redefining precepts of modern education through sustained interest. And once again, I welcome you all, the eminent panelists. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn. Dr. Anju Shazon, a pioneer of joyful experiential learning in India, propounder of learning through games and toys instead of textbooks, will tell us more about multi-sensorial experiential joyful learning and transdisciplinary aspect of pedagogy. Over to you, Dr. Anju.
Thank you very much, Alka ma'am, and hello to everybody on the panel. Thank you for inviting me today for this concluding webinar series. I know there are a lot of people probably logged on onto the YouTube channel and probably they are listening or they're doing other things. So I'm going to ask them to pause so that they can just bring their attention back to themselves in the midst of all the things that they're doing and maybe do this little exercise with me where you can have your thumb and little finger of your fists out in one direction. So thumb in one hand, little finger in the other, take it in and do the opposite. And with that, I hope if you're able to do this, then your attention is going to come back. So it's the thumb, let's say, in your right hand, out, left hand, little finger out, take it in, and then do the opposite. And what this does is that your left side of the brain and the right side of the brain are working, but mainly new neuron connections are being formed because it's something new. So it's going to awaken you. And if you're not awake still, then I'm going to ask you to tap, 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 tap. This is from Kriya Yoga. And you just say, awaken my cells, awaken. And if you just do a little bit of tapping like that, it gets your meridians going. It gets all the energy systems get rejuvenated. You have to do the full body, which you can't see right now, but I'm sure you must be doing it like good teachers and principals. All right. I'm very happy to share a presentation with you today. And I hope that you're all able to see this very soon. If you can see this, just give me a thumbs up. Yes, all right. I'm just trying to see if I can, well, it's not coming on as full screen, is it? Just a moment. Yes, into full screen. And so I'm going to start this presentation. This is called Mahatma Gandhi International School. I founded this 25 years ago, I think. And it is a school that's run under the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation. Now, the idea of the school was to bring in innovative learning, experiential learning 25 years ago, which it was quite new at that time. What you're going to see here are all classroom pedagogical practices. I'm going to begin by actually talking about a little poem written by my daughter. It's called Who Am I? And this is my daughter, Tara Shazot. My husband is French. I'm Indian. And in fact, we lost our daughter in 2014. And after that, we found a series of poems and scribblings that she had written. And this is what I like to present in my conferences and presentations, because I want to remind you that I'm talking to you all from a space of a mother and an educator. And I think the most important test that life can bring to you, an exam that, if we can call it that, is this kind of an exam when you lose somebody whom you cherish, and more importantly, when it's your own child. But having said that, the doors that it opens in your understanding are very different. And Tara was, and wherever she is today, is a very happy child. And therefore, this is the legacy that I want to carry on with, and to promote joyful learning for all the children who are there around us, because they are my children too now. That's the big door which has opened. So this little poem is called Who Am I? Who am I? Am I human? Am I an animal or a soul or just a body? But one day I will be on my own feet running and all of my dreams will come true, but I still have to find out who I am. And this is a human quest. Our educational system till today did not have enough space to answer the deepest questions about human existence, which is really, who am I? Why am I here? How do I contribute to society? Children really need to know that to be able to lead meaningful lives. Why is it that we're not able to answer this question? It's because we have inherited what is often called as the prison model in education. And if you look at this model, which came through the process of colonization, look at this little picture with kids sitting fixed onto their benches and chairs, static. And this is the prison model because the uniforms, roll calls, assembly sessions, monitor system, subjugation of the body, this hierarchy of and the serial structure, the linear structure of seating, all of this is coming from prisons. Also the timetable. So, monitoring the child, controlling the child through time. These are all inheritances that we have. And perhaps it is time, as we move forward with the NEP, we move forward as an independent country, we must now shift out of this paradigm. So we have to move towards well-being. Why? I think the pandemic has brought home to all of us the tremendous importance of well-being. And that is, how do we achieve this? Well, you can achieve it by, first of all, having choice for the children. Children must have a choice in what they're doing. The learning must be purposeful. It must have meaning, must be related to the child's life. It must not be based on a competitive or a cooperative model. So we're going from survival of the fittest paradigm to a paradigm of thriving, and Swaraj, which is a Gandhian notion of self-governance, which means you need to be aware of yourself. What are you good at? What are your skills? What are your passions and interests? So these are the important notions. Now, what's the ecosystem that can support this? The ecosystem is that the school must have democratic setup. And here you can see that the children in our school make their own rules, and they, of course, resolve conflicts themselves too, right from kindergarten to higher classes. So the young children draw their rule, they make sketches, they draw, older children can write their rules, and they do all their conflict resolution through that. The seating arrangement is also more democratic. There are no linear, front benchers, back benchers. It's flexible seating. Children can sit anywhere. And the tables, in fact, go up onto the wall. So remember, ours is a municipal school. Actually, it's a municipal school building. And we have had to manage with the infrastructure that was there in terms of space of a municipal school. And that was the biggest challenge. And we have done things with it, which I'm going to share with you. So the pedagogy that I created with my husband and the team that I have here is called generated resource learning. And you'll see shortly why. The premise is this, that everything is a resource to learn. And the biggest resource that you have is your body. You have the space and you have the daily objects that surround you. So children are generating their own data. They're doing their own things, when they're learning. Here you can see that the floor of the classroom has been painted. Children are actually painting the world map there. So by doing that, they're of course learning a lot of concepts like, spatial orientation, scaling, sense of space and distance. And they're also using everyday little materials to put in, their geographical features, etc. And of course, once the entire world map is done, it becomes a giant board game for them to play, where they run from place to place, eyes open, eyes closed, etc. And as you can see, the cost factor is almost zero. And at the end of 3-4 days, they've learned it all, and they are very happy to throw lots of water or wipe it all off. It's great fun. The body is also used in other ways. In higher classes, they're learning the periodic table, and here there are all electrons in an atom, and they're doing the atom dance. And when they do the dance, the choreography is related to the nature of the element. If it's carbon, the choreography is a tight one, and they have to justify why that choreography, whereas the others have to guess what is the element that they're presenting. Or there may be other ways. We're talking about multisensorial. Here again, they're using their fingers in the sense of touch to understand what is the configuration of the atom. And they're working in pairs. So one child has created it and the other has to touch and guess. So we were talking about going towards connection, from fragmentation of knowledge to connection, from competition to cooperation, and from repetition to creation, from rote learning to creativity. How do we do that? The projects that we do in the school are, again, transdisciplinary by their very nature, and the children learn by doing these projects. Here, for example, it's a cafeteria project. So they're first of all becoming aware of what are the kinds of, what are they eating, always beginning with the child's own life and context, and tracking what they're eating, and then coming to conclusions about what do you really need to change in your health or diet, and then going on to a project to make food for another group, and therefore making all the calculations in volumes and weights, calculating the accounts, going and making the purchases, making the food, serving the food. And you can see that in such a situation, a lot of different subject areas are very naturally integrated. For example, it might be mathematics with accounting and profit and loss, and health and hygiene, and languages, science, etc. Similarly, here you have another project, which is waste management project, where again, they're bringing the packaging that they use, maybe tracking their own consumption patterns for a week, bringing it to school, and then weighing it, sorting it, classifying it, and even examining what they're eating, looking at the labels. And this kind of critical thinking is very crucial. This is how you introduce it, by actually the actual work that they're doing. So you can see that they've classified local products to international products, needs and desires, what are their wants, what are their desires, identifying that, and running awareness campaigns about the excess packaging that they're using. Such projects very naturally, of course, integrate a lot of visual arts and graphic design. And, when you're running an awareness campaign, for example, the mapping of a project is very important. And this is an important part I want to share with all the teachers and educators, is that we do not begin with the content. What we begin with is a real life project for the child, something that's connected to the child's life. And the last thing that comes in is the content or the competency, through the competency. So here you can see these are the processes which are mapped. What are the range of things that we're going to be doing? How are we going to do? That's where you track the how. And then in the last stage, we put in the competencies. Connections also means connecting to indigenous knowledge. Here children are, learning to make matka fridge with a science concept, local languages coming in. Or you have technology, they're making social films on social issues of their choice. And in the making of the film, of course, they have languages and script writing and physics of sound and light and editing softwares, ethics, etc. So here they were making films, let's say for an election commission, for example, as a pilot project. Now here are the languages being integrated. They've created the voters pledge in Gujarati language. And this the government sends to 75 lakh voters. 71 lakh voters actually return the signed pledge to the government. And this creates the idea of citizenship, which of course got an award. The children got an award for that. So the projects have to be very related to the child's life. When we're talking about also use of toys, we're talking about indigenous knowledge, indigenous toys. You can see here, this is a simple toy, and they're just looking at how many attempts can you use it for. They're collecting their own data, presenting the data, calculating the statistics and probability of success, and making their own graphs. Therefore, the data is real data generated by the kids. It's not artificial data coming from an external source, which has no connection to the child's life. And because they are generating the data, it has meaning for them, and therefore they're much more engaged and participate in a deeper way. Another project is like a calendar, fifth grade students making a calendar. You can see that they're going in the gardens, they're sketching, they're collecting the leaves. These leaves, they're doing the shading, they're doing the embroidery, they've gone to do paper making units, they made their own paper, and they have, by doing all of this, they're looking at calendar calculations, leap years, parts of plants, geographical concepts, mathematics, to learn to do the layout of the calendar and, of course, then sell the calendar. So this is just an example of the kind of range of work. This is on handmade paper, by the way, that the kids have done standard 5. So now let's come forward to, shall we not, what about examinations? And let's not talk about exam, but let's talk about giving value to what the children know. Here, these are interdisciplinary assessments, designing jewelry inspired from different civilizations, or making posters and running their own political party campaign with their own manifesto. And giving feedback to each other. So that's where the peer feedback comes in, according to the rubrics that children have made, according to the criteria. This is a kind of reporting that's possible with a lot of range of creative tasks also, not just written and rote learning of definitions, quizzes, creative writing, posters, models, design solutions, interviews, etc. And of course, qualitative reporting with self-evaluation, peer evaluation, and parent feedback. So this is something we've been doing for a long time. Now, of course, the big question is about teachers. How can teachers really do this? And my main thing is that, teachers must also have a joyful experiential learning. Teachers must be transformed by the learning themselves, and only then would they be able to pass it on to the children. So a lot of embodied learning here. You can see the bodies in action are very important. Like it was mentioned, this experiential learning course is on the Diksha platform. So if teachers haven't done it already, most welcome to go there and look at all the videos. I'm coming to the end of my presentation now very shortly. And just a couple of slides I want to share that after we lost our daughter, we started to receive messages through different means from Tara. And that led me to explore the importance of intuition in life, the inner resources. I've spoken about resources which are external, but we have a lot of inner resources, which is really a gut feeling, our intuition, our sixth sense. And that's what we started working on, and I'm creating the consciousness curriculum. Here is an example of that, which you can see on our website, which is called the rice experiment, where by emotions alone and by giving it different emotions, the nature of rice, the matter changed. So these are 3 jars, and all the 3 jars had different results according to the emotion that was given to it, according to the words that were said to it. You can check that out. Children are also now learning to do career choices, not only on their rational brain, but through their gut feeling and intuition. So energy, connecting with energy, and reading each other's energy and accessing that other sense. In the end, my last slide, another short poem from my daughter Tara. The world they say, the world they said. The world is a big place and I'm small. But I matter because I am matter. And every child matters. And therefore, every child has to have this wonderful transformational experience of joy and liberation. That's really the purpose of education, to find out who am I and why am I here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Anju. I'm glad to hear you speak about integrating visual art, graphic design, and of course, mind over matters. This will certainly help us create happy schools where robust learning occurs. Learning to teach, teaching to learn, a paradigm shift in innovative practices is what Dr. Sunita Rao, our next panelist, is going to highlight. Having developed digital pedagogy and mapping the curriculum at all levels to differential instructions, competency-based education, and multiple intelligence, we surely will have many takeaways from her presentation. Over to you, Dr. Sunita.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anchal. Ms. Alka, thank you so much. In fact, greatly moved by Dr. Anju and her sharing. It was a joy the last time I was with you during Shikshapar, Dr. Anju, and a lot of learning happens. Really, I'm sure, excited everyone present here today, touching upon the 3 hearts and nothing less than that. I'm so happy to be here today on this closing session of the webinar on NEP hosted by CBSE. Thank you so much for bringing me on board. Learning to teach, teaching to learn, a paradigm shift in innovative practices. There are so many areas into which we ventured, trying to bring in new ideas or new thought processes into the classroom and the practices that exist in school. But then with the kind of time that we have today, I thought I would focus on three major ideas. In fact, as the Chief Learning Officer, somebody told us that we should call ourselves that today. And with me starting to relate to the fact that we are pedagogical leaders as much as we are teachers, I've always believed that curriculum and lesson design, teaching, learning practices of a school cannot be static. They are dynamic to suit the needs of the diverse learners. And every single day, the learners are changing in terms of their awareness and the knowledge that they bring to the classroom. And therefore, I think we as teachers have to keep evolving. I would like to focus on the three major areas which I and my team at DPS Naturum have been working through, especially with a lot of research going into national and international practices, and we've initiated a new age approach. Let me present the digital curriculum. We found that across the school years, teachers have been engaging in a lot of, I must say, professional development and empowerment and capacity building happening. But then end of the day, with 7,777 students in my main campus and 1,360 in the primary campus, the whole need for me was to ensure personalized education for each child and something unique for each child. Now, how do I get there? So that was the whole crux. It was a problem that I was facing because I had to ensure that the child is not lost as part of a crowd, but still feels I'm a valued member of this school and institution. And that's how the research brought us to solutions of a digital curriculum, and also ensure to bring in a 360-degree approach to observation of every task that a child engages in every single day in school, and leading it to documentation of the child's levels and improvements, and very importantly, assessment, and also worked to take the clubs and the work experience and the hobby clubs to another level of ideation, tech-driven ideation, and business ideas. So the digital transformation of curriculum is designed to customize as per the objectives, integrating a host of, I must say, direction and guidelines given by NEP, to say the least, about differentiated instruction, multiple intelligences, CBE, integrated curriculum, multidisciplinary approach. And in the process, a lot of work was done towards what else do we have on board? What can the teacher do to engage a pre-primary child? What can a teacher do to excite a senior school child in terms of learning the concepts? And that's how we started designing another lesson plan, designing and to ensure that we are able to integrate a host of various approaches to learning. And I have a sample of a lesson plan. Let me just give you a peek into it. It's not very easy to run you through the whole process, but let me tell you, this is an exemplar lesson plan in EVS, our body, based on scientific inquiry. And if you look at the lesson plan, we are focusing on the stage, which stage it is, and then the methodology, the ICT integration. We have videos and PPTs integrated to teach the topic. This actually is running across, 10 days of teaching plan. There is a grid. There is a quiz, a word grid game on the parts of body. There is a song to which the children join hands to sing. There is a dance integrated to the lesson plan, such that on body, so the children get to dance on it. And if you look at this plan, we are having, it represents experiential learning. It represents integration of art. So the children are engaging in, the kind of tasks that go across developing the concept to introduction to developing the concept to taking it further to deeper understanding of the concept. We've ensured to integrate experiential learning, providing home assignments in terms of something unique, like not the normal. So we've also done ensure the children have a little research-based home task and not the mundane task. Also think on open-ended tasks that are provided to children, and importantly, every child in the class had something in them for in the plan for themselves, be it intrapersonal, verbal, spatial, logical, or kinesthetic, and in the process got to engage in a personal level. And what was the starting point? Then what had we to do on the teacher side, the facilitator, and the student side to ensure that the teachers, I have 318 teachers in the main campus. How did we get all these teachers to get excited about the change that was coming up in the design? The starting point was a growth mindset change and getting everyone ready for a change in the classroom practices. In fact, we had to work on the learning culture, the learning environment, and importantly on the learning spaces. Did we bring in more learning spaces into our school? Did we envisage a classroom without walls and move out into space, nature, and to other spaces in the school? All of this had to be done, and we had to empower our teachers, and we had to get them into our fold of thinking, accepting, and I should say with a sense of ownership, where they also involve themselves in designing. And that's how we could arrive at certain solutions for the students. And in terms of research, I think every single year the school has got the teachers through continuous professional development in many ways than one. But the last 16 months have been much more on board in terms of CPD, with the teachers getting upskilled through a host of in-house training and mentoring systems, and a lot of research practices coming in, whether it's CBSE or COE or DP Society and a host of other trainings. All our teachers, whether it's the subject teachers or the performing and visual art department or physical education department, wellness team or library team, all have taken Nishta courses or Diksha courses and done a host of Harvard certifications, Cambridge diploma, National Geography certified and Trinity certified, to ensure that they were capable of transcending from a normal conventional plan to that expected much more from them, and definitely in terms of digital interventions on the technological world. And this is how the teachers started exploring and using, whether it's podcast or polling or GeoGebra or virtual manipulatives. And on the student side, it was important to get our learners ready for a host of various engagements. The first plan or the first thinking that had to happen in school is, what is the structure of our virtual school? Because the child has moved from a physical school to a virtual school. How could we engage 36 to 38 learners with equality and equity running high, and each child, relating to the task that was being designed for them? So we had to literally make sure that the plan of a 35-minute had about 15 minutes mandatory student engagement. And if you come and visit the almost 350 sections in the school, on par with each other, whatever level of classes, we will find the children are engaging in breakout rooms, working independently with peer leading concept, peer working model, team concept. And there is a lot that they get to do beyond. In spite of a virtual mode, the teachers are able to provide for a platform wherein children are not looking at the screen per se, but they get to talk to each other, relate to each other, share, and slowly and subtly they're growing from being dependent learners to independent learners, and they're also taking responsibility for their learning. And that's how we could make sure that the child experiences blending learning models, creativity and innovation, critical thinking plans, collaborative learning tasks that were given to them, and project-based learning and group work. I just have a few samples of the self-organized learning environment, our children at work, then the inquiry-based learning where the child is presenting in the class, and the project-based learning where every single child adopted to create a green space, irrespective of the fact that they were not in school and they had to take responsibility for this. Discovery-based learning happening here, and group discussions on during the classroom sessions on varied topics, not just the concepts outlined in the NCERT curriculum. Flipped classroom models running high and peer tutoring. I'm so happy that it was not just the teacher creating resources for children in terms of podcast and so on, but children created for as tutoring podcasts for each other. This is the digital library. We again realize that the wonderful library that is in school is no longer accessible to children. So I know there is less time in hand, so I will not go through the whole plan visible on this digital library. But then let me tell you, the whole purpose was to ensure that children still engaged in reading, and a lot of choices given through our platform, which we have created, which is open platform for various levels, as you see here in my screen, 1 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12. All of them get to engage on reading tasks, on researching through videos, through doing book reviews or recreational crossword puzzles, board games, and fun activities. They also get to sign in for an engagement that is meeting an author. Sometimes they also invite a friend to this reading club. Let me just quickly give you a peek into the 360-degree approach, which I was talking about, where we ensure that every dimension of skill development, every dimension of improvement that happens in a child is actually captured, and the child is made aware of what is the scaling up of their level of independence that's happening. And we wanted the parents also to be able to track this. So we created an individual tracker, which is available to the parents and the children at the click of a button. It is part of our, I must say, the ERP solutions in school. And every single parent, this is just a peek into one of the individual trackers of a student. I have permission of the student to show you this. We are not just looking at the academic scorecard of the child. We are also looking at all other necessary parameters of children in terms of their growth concept that has to be observed, that has to be recorded, documented, and they're kept in place for years together. So if any child goes a few years before, also they're able to track where they stood in their sports interest, whether yoga, be measuring under the parameters of highly skilled, average skill, needs improvement. Art skills are also under different parameters, rated and scaled up. And the child has a guidance as to where do I stand, whether it's life skills, adaptable, cooperation with peers and teachers, displays, impulse control, respect others, and a host of scholastical skills, application, creativity, logical. Yes, when I rattle all of these, someone watching us might say, does a teacher do all this? And how do you do that? Trust me, I can show you the model that's working. The first point here is teachers feeling that this is important and accepting it. Once there is an acceptance in a school, I must say, and a sense of ownership and belongingness, after that, there's no looking back. The children have multi-dimensional approach of growth, and that is being given to them in multiple ways. Let me just give you one peek into the scaling up of the normal weekly clubs, and because that definitely exists, because almost with 18 sections across every single class level that I have in my school, we have about 17, 18 clubs running with complete independence given to children to choose. But we scaled up to robotics, where they created a humanoid, they created a mobile ambulance, and they created prototypes at class 6 to 12, the middle school to senior school are really happy engaging here. The adult tinkering lab, the artificial intelligence, it's not, I won't say it's an advanced learning. We've just done an introduction to machine learning concepts at a basic level. The adult tinkering lab, we have one of our projects by our senior school has now seen a product launch on the Amazon. It's a farm tech, whether through a mobile app and device app for farmers. The farmers are able to track the content or the water content in soil. So it's a host of areas. I think I'll run out of time if I want to say everything that happens in school. You have to see to believe that students are able to create a plane. in through aero modeling. A drone pilot was created and they were able to understand the logic. I don't think I would be able to do that. The children were able to do that. I strongly believe courage and conviction and confidence to lead a team and towards innovation is a prerequisite for any educational institution. On that note, thank you so much. I regret if I've overstepped my time given to me.
Thank you, Dr. Sunitha. Really an exhaustive presentation, and we sure are going to come and visit your school. This will be very useful to our educators who have tuned in, and as we all believe that technology can amplify text. A research done in 2020 states that many teachers questioned themselves whether or not their own teaching practices represented pedagogical innovations, considering that the contextualized nature of innovation is unique and unique to innovative pedagogies. Does one size fit all? I would call our next panelist, Ms. Gulshan Kaur, to elaborate how what may seem ideal for one subject may not suffice the demand of the other. Over to you. Yes, Ms. Kaur, we are ready.
Yes. Thank you for inviting me. Let me first share my screen. Is the screen visible?
Yes, yes, Ms. Kaur.
Thank you, Ms. Alka. These webinars organized by CBSE earmarks celebration for 1 year of national new education policy. I find it so pertinent that we have got together to discuss on innovative pedagogies which lie to the essence of NEP 2020. I totally agree when Dr. Anju has presented that education as mass production, and when we stand at the cusp of the fourth education revolution, we are moving from that mass production to individuating of learning, to individuation. So before I give my presentation, I will like to start it with a Sanskrit shloka. Acharyata padam madatte padam shishya swamedhaya padam sa brahmacharibhya padam kal karmena cha. This Sanskrit verse from Mahabharata tells us that a learner gains 1/4 of the knowledge from the teacher, 1/4 from his own efforts, that is through exploration and self-study, 1/4 from his peers, and remaining 1/4 from the environment as he becomes mature with time. You see, so appropriate is the verse that if we integrate it in our learning designs, I call it learning designs, we will reach out to every child, no matter what signature pedagogy works for them or what kind of poly-E exceptionalities they exhibit. NEP has recommended various pedagogies in para 4.6, which, if applied in one's own context, will not only make learning relatable, but will also make it immersive, interesting, and will carry a very deep impact. The need is to evaluate what kind of pedagogy should be used to achieve optimum learning in students. Now, let me illustrate some innovative pedagogies applied by us. My focus will be on 2 pedagogies, though we have applied a number of pedagogies, but given the time constraint, I'll focus on 2 pedagogies which are even, spoken very, very, pertinently and significantly in new education policy. I'm sure that you will be able to relate the use of these pedagogies in your own frame of reference. Embodied learning. That's the first pedagogy I will be taking up. So, the use of embodied learning as a pedagogical approach focuses on the non-mental factors involved in learning. Here, we have prepared a learning design for class 9th on the application of trigonometry by integrating sports in learning. And the purpose is to enable students to apply the trigonometrical concepts in real life situation. Hence, the learners are actively involved and are just not passively absorbing information. They are thinking, learning, and producing at the same time. The maths teacher takes the students to the basketball court where the sports teacher sets up the activity by making children play the game of basketball. The lesson progresses with some warm-up questions asked by the maths teacher, followed by demonstration whereby the teacher will relate basketball game with the application of trigonometrical concepts and engage the children constructively to apply the concept of angle of elevation, height of the player, the distance of students from the pole, etc., and its impact on framing strategies by teams to capture maximum shooting of the ball. Now, this approach helps students internalize the concepts very easily, apply them in extended situations, kindles their visualization, enhances their imagination, develops psychomotor skills, builds curiosity, promotes critical thinking and problem solving, and of course, makes them empathetic and keen observers. Besides this, they also learn to work in teams. Further, through discussions and practice of the concept, the children gain mastery, because that is what we need today, the mastery of learning. We should not be settling at 95% or even for that sake 99% of learning. We should be focusing on mastery of learning. At the heart of this approach is a sensitivity to the natural inclinations of the learners towards play, creativity, collaboration, and inquiry. And then you can take it further by asking students to do a kind of self-facilitation and present a collaborative project on the application of trigonometric concept for some other games like baseball, softball, etc. Now I'll move on to the second illustration, which is toy-based pedagogy. Now we generally connote toys with small kids, but let me tell you that it attracts everyone, no matter what their age group is. I will share with you an interesting learning design whereby the students, they are using toys with a multidisciplinary approach to understand and experience a chapter of class 11th of English from the NCERT book. We Are Not Afraid to Die, written by Gordon Cook and Alan East, that speaks about the adventures and experiences of a family which had set out on a 3-year round-the-world voyage from Plymouth, England in 1976 on their ship Wave Walker. The family experienced the roughest of weather, and despite the life-threatening experience, they did not give up. So the purpose is to enable the students to comprehend the lesson, which is a travelogue, with emphasis on understanding the time-tested values of unity, resilience, and willpower. The teacher started the lesson with a small activity of dividing the students into heterogeneous groups through selection of similar sketches of boat models. It was followed by discussion on adventurous journeys, expeditions, whereby each group shared their own stories. So you see, storytelling is being, involved in it. Thereafter, the lesson was taken up. The students read, discussed, comprehended, and made meaningful conversations. The teacher allotted the topics to the groups for research and exploration. And this research was multidisciplinary in nature, as some must present their notes on evolution of various types of boats. So you see the assessment, what is mapped? Note making. right? Then their designs and mechanisms, while others were asked to present concept maps, citing out technical reasons for various misadventures. Still others must give a PowerPoint presentation on explorers like Christopher Columbus, Captain James Cook, Vasco da Gama, and the sea routes that established dominance. So assessment is also taken up side by side when the children present, their findings, and how is it that you assess with well-framed rubrics. Next was the create activity of toy making, because that is what we wanted to make get into it and make the lesson very, very interesting and very, very relatable, whereby the students were asked to make various types of boards in their groups while taking into account the basic principles of physics like buoyancy, aerodynamics, relative density, velocity, etc., under the guidance of their physics teacher. And they also deliberated on as how and why their boards function differently from the sailboards mentioned in the lesson. They learned about the design and the vocabulary used. The change in the shape and size of the board influences the balancing of the board as it shifts the center of gravity. The mathematics teacher guided them about it and explained the concept of speed upstream and downstream graphically through equations and relating it to the lesson taught. Thereafter, the students were asked to imagine if they were a voyager and with their family on a similar kind of a sea voyage, then what difference will they note in their experiences given the current context of how marine cruisers are designed now and what kind of problems they may face or they can anticipate. So write a travelogue based on it. Now, what does this activity do? This surges creativity as well as critical thinking in children. However, the key takeaway from the lesson was focused on no matter how primitive the technology is used, but what made a difference was the resilience and faith the family had shown in that lesson, which have made them survive the testing times. Of course, there's an interdisciplinary approach, which you can see from this lesson plan at a glance. And we found that the toy-based pedagogy used has enhanced the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor skills of the students, besides enriching them with life skills and values. And what is very striking is that it can be used in both digital and in-person mode, or you can even blend it. However, I want to remark that technology should be approached from the pedagogical perspective. It's very important. Just adopting technology is not enough. Adopting technology with the pedagogical perspective is what is required. I'll move on to another illustration, which is again an example of toy-based pedagogy. It is based on a board game on a periodic table. It was observed that generally students face difficulty in understanding periodic table, and then they resort to learning of some mnemonics to remember them, like Halina ke rab se faryad or Bangan alu gajar in thaila, to learn those blocks of periodic table. So we thought of as why not to create a game on periodic table. This game introduces the periodic table in such a way that after playing the game, the students will be able to internalize the values very easily. I can show you this game. It's on the screen and it's in my hand also. So we have used it even in blended mode, which you can see in the upcoming slides, that blended learning, 2 players join through virtual podium while 2 students join from the classroom. And what has happened, we also made the children create this game on their own. And when they design the game with surrounding trajectories filled with interesting questions related to elements, scientists, and formulas, the learning becomes very meaningful, interactive, and joyful. With iterations, the child can learn the concept very effectively. Now, whatever I have presented, we have tried them in our classrooms. And I'm convinced that the kind of impact it has created had made my classroom engagements very effective. Students are no more surface atomistic learners, but deep thinkers. They take learning not as a burden anymore, they enjoy it. And these pedagogies used are scalable, can be applied at all levels with different subjects. We have used it for different standards and subjects by making it relevant. Applying pedagogy, which should be age appropriate, is a very significant factor and should be based on one's context, evidence of teaching and learning, and data analysis, and the curriculum applied. I will conclude my presentation with a thought that please empower your educators by training them on subject specific and generic skills and give them the wings to explore. Create a safe place for them to make mistakes, take risks, and ask questions. Take my words, they will grow innovative. They will be the design scientists. Thank you so very much. I am open to all the questions now. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gulshan. Designing and practicing every day will go a long way in ensuring a happy curriculum. How beautifully put by you. Now, these innovations will certainly bolster quality teaching practices. I now call upon our last speaker on the panel, Ms. Achal Chomal, who would throw some light upon ways to align pedagogy with learning outcome-centric approach and assessments that are an integral part of teaching learning process. So over to you. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. And, the advantage of being the last on the panel is that it helps you synthesize and also listen very deeply to all the wonderful work that my fellow panelists spoke about. What I will try and do is, because I have less than 10 minutes, is try to synthesize everything that has been discussed and provide educators on this platform a framework to look at innovative pedagogy. But before we step into innovative pedagogy, we all need to rewind our lives and go back 18 months, We need to remember the context in which we are talking about innovative pedagogy. So yes, 1 year of NEP has happened, but 1.5 years of the pandemic has happened. And schools have been shut. The only space where students went to collaborate, to learn, to have fun with their fellow peers, that space is not there. Where teachers went to enjoy that warm cup of coffee and discuss how would they innovate their lesson plan, that is not there. So we've all been thrown into the situation where schools have been shut. There are studies after studies which are reporting that there is a dramatic amount of learning loss that has happened. Teachers, parents, students, we are all struggling to adapt to online education, but we all recognize that education is a very intimate process of collaboration, of inquiry, of discovery, which happens when the teacher, the student, the peers, they are sharing a physical space. So no matter whatever we try to do on the online mode, it will not be as effective as it would have been if we were doing this on a face-to-face mode, right? So this is the context in which we are thrown into. But unfortunately, this is the reality of today's time until schools reopen. So until the time schools reopen and when schools reopen, what is it that we need to do? And I think the three most fundamental questions which all of us are confronted as educators are, how do schools prioritize what to teach, right? Because behind every pedagogy, there is a thought of what is it that my students should learn through this particular pedagogy, right? Secondly is what kind of activities should I use to enable that learning, to enable children to achieve the competencies that my fellow panelists spoke about. And thirdly, no matter whatever pedagogy we use, it's very important to reflect on, are my students really learning? And is my pedagogy really being effective in bridging the learning gaps that they may be having? Right? This is a very pertinent question today because schools have been shut, and a child who's in class 6 today, the last time the child saw the doors of the school was when he or she was in class 4. So this question becomes very important for us to ponder, that are children really learning in this mode despite our best efforts, right? So I'm going to throw some thoughts on possible approaches that we need to take, and this is also going to synthesize some of the things that NEP 2020 talks about: pedagogy, assessment, and learning outcomes. So the first thing that we need to all remember as educators is to begin with the end. And what do we mean by this? What we mean by this is we need to take a learning outcome centric approach to teaching. Every little thing that we do in the classroom should be purposive. It should help teachers achieve the core competencies which school education, is wants to nurture, wants to foster among students, right? It should focus on abilities, the ability to speak, the ability to write, the ability to do critical thinking, the ability to synthesize, the ability to say whatever you want to say in a short, crisp manner. So the outcomes of education need to be the centerpiece of what we do in classrooms with children. The need for dispositions is felt like never before because of the kind of stress, the kind of trauma students have gone through, especially during the second wave. I think nurturing of dispositions, nurturing of socio-emotional skills has become more important than ever before. So as educators, we also need to remember that our pedagogy should be such which is child-centric, which enables children to open up in classrooms and share their woes, share their unhappiness, share the kind of experiences that they've gone through in these last 18 years, right? 18 months. Right? Finally, I think it's very important for us to recognize that, it's going to be practically impossible for us to do every little thing in the syllabus. While syllabuses have been rationalized, it's important as educators to prioritize on a few core learning outcomes. And through the teaching of the different subjects, we focus on those core learning outcomes which are foundational for any child who comes to school. So even if the child has had disrupted learning, or if the child does not have adequate access to remote learning opportunities, because like Madam said in the beginning, that we are talking about students who come from wide socioeconomic backgrounds, right? So we need to look at pedagogy that has space for every single child, that is equitable. So it's important that even if the child is coming to the class, to the online class for an hour, he or she learns something. And that therefore, there is need for prioritization of fewer learning outcomes which are core and fundamental, rather than trying to cover the entire spectrum of things that the curriculum is suggesting. So that's the first thing that we would need to do as educators. The second thing is, very often when you have your learning outcomes in place, but sometimes your pedagogical approach is not aligned to it. So we often face this issue where we would like to do a lot of things, but generally there is a misalignment. So, and it also happens that our assessment gets aligned to our pedagogy, but our assessment is not aligned to the learning outcome. And this example on your screen very clearly shows that while the outcome talks about the ability to solve daily life problem, the pedagogy and the assessment is only focusing on the procedural aspect of solving a 3-digit addition sum, right? So as educators, we also need to remember that even if you know your outcomes, it's very important to align the outcomes with the pedagogy and the assessment. And only when there is this kind of a constructive alignment between your outcome and your pedagogy are you truly helping students learn, right? So this is the second most important thing for us to keep in mind, that whichever pedagogic approach we adopt, that should help in achieving the learning outcome. And our assessment then should also help in measuring whether the learning outcome has been achieved and to what extent has the learning outcome been achieved. Right? Third and the final thing, I think, is that no pedagogy is complete without assessment. And this is an area which is very close to my heart. I think in today's world, we need a dramatic shift in the culture of assessment. The NEP talks about it quite emphatically. It talks about the need for assessments to be more formative, where students and teachers and peers collaboratively move towards understanding their learning, making learning more meaningful, more productive. And if you see those two pyramids on your screen, it's very clear that we need to completely overturn the emphasis to summative tests, which are only measuring learning, giving marks and grades, to tests which are more to assessments which are helping us provide feedback to students, which is going to help them in improving their teaching learning. Right? So I'm going to take a minute and talk about assessment as learning, which the NEP talks about in a lot of detail. You see, assessment as learning is the need of today's hour. And if you see all these illustrious athletes on the screen, these are athletes who have won because they have been able to measure themselves against their own goalposts. So today, what we are talking about is a culture of assessment which is used for feedback and self-reflection, where a student should be able to use his or her own past performance to decide what is it that he or she would like to achieve, the next time he or she does an assignment, or takes a test, or does a project. So we need a culture of assessment which promotes reflection, which promotes introspection, which promotes metacognition, and takes away the stress, the anxiety, because after all these beautiful pedagogical innovations that my fellow panelists spoke about, if they have to write a 50-mark examination paper which only has questions in multiple choice question, it's a disservice to all the wonderful things that we've done. So we need to shift to assessment as learning, where the student is the owner of his or her learning process. The student is able to reflect, and the student is empowered to self-assess. Right? So with this, I would like to summarize that, if going back to the 3 questions that I asked at the beginning, that it's important to focus on learning outcomes to determine what to teach. It is important to look at a pedagogical approach which is constructively aligned to the outcomes and where your assessments are seamlessly integrated with your teaching learning process. It's also important to make a cultural shift in the nature of assessments. Look at assessments as more diagnostic, more analytical, more developmental tools to help you improve student learning and also improve your craft as teachers. Right? So with that, thank you so much. And over to you, Alka.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anchal. Thank you for such a wonderful insight into the world of assessments. With all these beautiful presentations on creating exciting learning experiences, adapting learning modalities best suited to each learner, mindful and transformative embedding of technology will certainly enhance student engagement. Well, I had a lot of questions that I wanted to pose and ask you all, but I guess, do we have, Dr. Pragya, time to ask one question?
Yeah, please go ahead. Please, sure.
Okay. Okay, so all right. Thank you so much. Well, Ms. Anchal, I would just like to ask you, when you spoke about the purpose of assessment, you said it is to collate relevant feedback that can be utilized to make calculative judgments about the learning process. When we were talking before we started the webinar, you spoke about alignment between the pedagogy and the learning outcomes and how the need to have that constructive alignment is much more heightened than ever before. Now, do elaborate on how diagnostic assessment can be done in the times that we are going through.
Sure. Thanks, Alka. So I think the first thing that we need to understand is that we need to look at assessment as a pedagogical tool and not as a tool to evaluate students, right? So by that, what I mean is that we have to stop looking at assessment in a straight-jacketed approach where you would just like to rank students, you would like to make them compete with each other. And this is not just relevant for teachers, it's also relevant for parents to recognize this, that the purpose of assessment gets defeated if you just use it as a tool to sieve and filter that, my child has stood first and somebody else's child has stood second. In this current context, assessment is a pedagogy. And what I mean by that is, assessment helps you understand what's going on in the mind of the child. I would like to share a very small anecdote that, I was in Udham Singh Nagar doing a survey with children and I asked this particular child, ki aankhein kis kaam aati hai? This entire survey was with disadvantaged children in a particular district. And I was carrying a survey sheet with me and this child turns around and says, Didi, aankhein rone ke kaam aati hai. and I didn't know what to say, because typically when you open the EVS textbook, you see the eyes is used to see, to watch, to read, and here there's a child who's talking about her own life experience. And post that response, of course, I left my survey sheet aside and I just sat down and I just spoke to the child at length about, and this was a subject, environmental science. So I spoke to the child about his or her family, who all are there, what kind of experiences has she had. So essentially, when I say diagnostic assessment, I think this is at the heart of any assessment. It gives you a sneak peek into what the child is thinking, and this is a very underutilized function of assessment. So as educators, we need to remember that whenever the student gives a response, he or she, something has happened in his or her mind, and being able to understand that, being able to analyze that, is extremely critical for any diagnostic assessment to take place. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that, in the kind of context that we are living today, as I said, that a child of class 6 may not be at the class 6 level. So it's important that our diagnostic assessments take into account prerequisite learning of class 4 and even class 5, because you may not know that you are teaching a group of children a topic which is of grade 6, but the child has forgotten everything that the child may have learned in grade 4 and 5. So remembering prerequisite learning is very important, and focusing that in our diagnostic assessment. And thirdly, I think teachers across grades need to collaborate together to develop these diagnostic assessments. We have to stop looking at grade 6, grade 5, grade 4. We need to look at a approach where teachers across grades are collaboratively designing some assessments to understand where really are the learning gaps of the students. So those are some thoughts, Alka.
Thank you. You pretty well answered, what I wanted to ask you. Pragya ma'am, I guess that would be it, or do I have time to ask one more? No. I think this is how it happens. Ye dil mange more. So I guess is that it? So I had so many questions, to ask, but I will end on this by looking into the future and trying to predict what will happen. We also shape the future. We hope that the innovative pedagogy shared by these learned panelists will help us in shaping the future of the teaching, learning, and in opening possibilities for learners and teachers of all our CBSE schools. Today's webinar is the culmination of the series that CBSE organized to give more insights into the NEP recommendations and the initiatives taken by CBSE for implementing the same. Let the quest for quality persist. Let's be part of the transformational journey and be the catalyst of change that we wish to see in the world. It has been a very interesting conversation with such meaningful insights we all got today. But like I said, there were many questions, so maybe for some other day. And thank you, CBSE, for the same. And I would like to ask Dr. Pragya now to take over. Thank you once again, and let us all applaud, CBSE, as definitely every day brings something new, something exciting to learn. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Alka ma'am. And you rightly said that this is the finale of the CBSE webinar series on NEP. And this successful series has been materialized because of the visionary leadership of our Honorable Chairman, sir. Thank you, sir, for your motivation to organize this series. Our gratitude to all the keynote speakers of this series, especially to Changsan ma'am, who has encouraged us with her motivating words today. My thanks to Regional Director CBSE Shri KK Chaudhary ji, who has been continuously present and motivated us with his presence in this series. My thanks to our Director Academics, Dr. Joseph Emmanuel sir, and Dr. Vishwajit Saha sir, Director Training, who have been pioneers for this innovative thought and series. I'm thankful to all esteemed panelists and moderators who have given us very valuable insights in all the themes which we have covered in our series. And not last but not the least, all 270,000 educators across the country who have been watching this series right from 4th of August. And I'm sure they'll be able to implement all these initiatives in their schools. And lastly, I want to thank all my officers and officials of CBSE Academic Unit as well as Training Unit and all officers across the country of CBSE offices for their support in making this series a success. Thank you so much. Thank you. We end the series now. Thank you.